Family, family, let's go and get tonight started. What up, family? It's your boy, Reggie B. Coming to you live. Halloween is over. Man, it's killing me. They're putting up Christmas decorations throughout the neighborhood already. They just say fuck Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving get no respect. It is Friday night, family. Please post up where you checking in from. What part of the country you in? Let us know where you coming to us from, family. It is good to see y'all. Family, let's get into it. Let's keep it short tonight. Tonight's topic is paternity court fuckery. And that's the only way I can describe it, as fuckery. I've always liked, paternity court shows where they determine who the father is. They do some good things, whether they put families together and, bring fathers together with their kids. Sometimes they tear families apart because the results are not what somebody said they would be. It is easy for us to just blame men for not being there as fathers. And for men who have children, and those are in fact your children, or if you have accepted accountability and responsibility for them, they're yours, and do the right thing. I understand we're not perfect. I understand some men do the best they can. It's really hard as a man to be held accountable when at the time you were doing the best job you knew how, when maybe you were not emotionally, mentally, physically, fiscally, financially equipped to do what in hindsight you would have done. But it happens. What makes me confused is apparently there are so many men and women who do not understand how the human body works. And as a man, I always come to y'all and I always go at the men first. So we're going to keep that same energy tonight. Men, marry before you bury your seed in a woman. Make her your wife before you make her your baby mama. Women, marry before you carry. I know that's easy to say, and it may sound like I'm being judgmental. Just the outcomes don't seem to be that great when people do it the opposite way. Sometimes it works out good, but I think we could avoid a lot of the problems that society deals with if we just stop creating babies. So men, wrap it up until you want to be a father. Men, wrap it up until you are financially able to provide for a child. Men, wrap it up until you are mature enough to handle that responsibility. I understand a lot of us come into it, we do the best job we can, but damn, let's avoid some of the problems. With this topic tonight, again, men, we have to do better. Men, we have to be more responsible. And I understand as I say this, the majority of men are responsible with their seed. The majority of men are responsible with their seed. The majority of men are responsible with their seed. So I am not talking about all men. I think the data shows that the majority of children who are produced to single mothers come from a small percentage of overall men. I haven't looked at Kevin Samuel's data, but he used to say 61% of men were in the middle class, and I think 53% were single and childless. And I think he said like 20% of the men are making all these baby mamas and children. It's possible, but we got to do better, men. We got to do better. Men, stop taking your ass to paternity court talking about, well, I only make girls, so I know that that boy cannot be mine. You sound dumb as fuck. Men, stop saying we only had sex once, so there's no way that that's my child. That's not how it works. You sound like a fucking idiot. You sound like you are not willing to be an accountable man. Men, make sure you pay attention in science class, in health class. Read a book, watch a documentary, do something, go to YouTube. But we have to understand how the female body works. Currently, the political discussion is heavily centered on abortion. Men, we're the ones that are creating most of this. The responsibility has been thrust upon women to deal with this, but we can create a baby every time we have sex, late into our life. Women, you get a small window every month that you can produce a child. It's a very small window. So, men, we're the ones responsible. Okay, I've held men to a task. We're supposed to be leaders. We're supposed to be the head. We're supposed to be the guiders of our families. I've talked about us. Now I'm getting ready to talk about women. Women, learn how your body works. And I know that may sound like I'm being patronizing or I'm being insulting, but there are so many women who clearly don't understand how their body works. I hear some of the dumbest things from women when I'm watching various paternity court shows. And not just the Lauren Lake's paternity court, but I mean other media that show paternity test results. I've heard things a woman said the other day on the show I watched. She said, well, I had sex with this person over here 10 times. So that's why I'm confident this person is the father. There's only a 1% chance the other man I had sex with is the father. The judge asked the person, how did you come to 1%? Well, me and that person only had sex once. I had sex the majority of the other times with the other person. The judge said, that's not how math works. That's not how science works. That's not how the female body works. Ladies, stop this fuckery about, well, we were not trying to have a baby. Men, stop this fuckery about we were not trying to have a baby. If you were having sex and you were not specifically taking action to prevent pregnancy, then by default, you were trying to have a baby. It is uncomplicated. It is that simple. I have got a paternity court clip that I want to show tonight. And it's not to bash the woman, so miss me with that. I ain't here to bash. I don't know that woman. I get nothing out of bashing her. I would much rather shape and mold and educate than just to sit here and bash this random woman. But just like so many other women I have seen on different paternity court shows or different DNA testing shows, the woman was 100% confident that the man she brought to the show or to court or whatever was the father, and they turn out simply not to be. And if it's just two adults arguing about this, I don't have a lot of compassion for that. But what I do have a lot of compassion for is when we are dealing with kids, especially kids old enough to enter the conversation, and quite often it's adult children, where these offspring are just dogging a man out for being a deadbeat dad, for being this, for not being that, and he is just catching hell. And it turns out he's not the father. I've watched shows where men said, look, I have been put in jail multiple times for back child support because I know I'm not the father and I don't feel like I should have to pay it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, our court system, it has not kept up with medical science, but I can understand a man's perspective of being upset about being forced to pay child support for a child he knows is not his, and sometimes can prove with medical science that he is not the father, but he is still being forced to pay child support. It is a fucked up system, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. If I'm king for a day, there will be mandatory DNA testing before a man can sign a birth certificate. There would be mandatory DNA testing before a man can sign a birth certificate. If he gets the results back that he's not the father and he still wants to take on that responsibility, go for it. I'm happy for you. Do your thing. You have made an informed choice. But if a man has a baby with his wife, just because he is the husband, he is automatically assumed to be the father and responsible for child support. And quite often, men show up for court able to prove they are not the father. And sometimes the courts will simply go, we don't care. They don't use those words. They will say, you are still legally the father. Even if you are not biologically the father, you are legally the father, and hence you are responsible. Do you know how fucked up that is? That's like having DNA evidence to prove you didn't commit a murder and you in jail for 18 years. And you have DNA evidence from like the Innocence Project to prove it was not you, but you are still held accountable. It's in the best interest of the child. I get that, but it's in the best interest of the biological father to raise his child. Not just some random dude who got stuck, who was in his feelings when he signed the birth certificate at the hospital, or he just signed it out of ignorance, or he was labeled the default father because he missed a court date for a paternity test. Should men show up for their court date? Absolutely. Did a whole video about that. That subject is well sung. Show up for court, men. But there are a lot of men who simply don't get the notification because they relocated, they were given an address, or the court was given an address that wasn't theirs. And these men are named the father by default, and they can show up a week later to court and go, Your Honor, look, here is DNA evidence proving I am not the father. And quite often they are told, well, you are the father now. That's wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. Let's go to this video right now from Lauren Lake's paternity court, where I want you to pay attention to something. The mother of the child is the plaintiff, and the adult child is there with the mother. The man who is the defendant, he's the alleged father, and he's there with his new wife. And it is a very contentious hearing. There's a lot of yelling back and forth, folks not agreeing to basic facts, but something is important. The judge asked the mother, before I go to these results, you said there was only two men who could be the father. The mother acknowledged, yes. The judge reminded her, you also said you had the other man tested. So he is eliminated from being the father, which would by default make this new man the father. Are you agreeing to that? The mother said yes. Guess what?
We're not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere.
We're not.
We're not getting anywhere.
This is what I've been waiting.
Miss Percy, I am going to go to the results now.
Thank you, Lord.
I think it's time. Now, just to be clear, you said during that time you had been intimate with 2 men, and one has already been tested, and the test proved that he was not Miss Glenn's father.
Yes.
Mr. Gale is the other possible father.
Yes.
The only other possible father.
Yes.
Okay.
Crazy. You told me you gonna love me regardless.
I did.
You told me that you was gonna be there.
I did say that.
And then you gonna brush your hand up at me like I nothing?
That's
listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd
Y'all
like
done
to take a
too
seat.
much to me and mine.
No. If you'd like to take a seat for the reading of the results, you're more than welcome.
Sit down.
In the case of Percy Glenn versus Gale, when it comes to 26-year-old Tidra Glenn, it has been determined by this court, Mr. Gale, you are not her father.
Hey, me, boo. Holla at your girl. Let's roll.
what you talking about.
No problem.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. You glad.
Yes, I am.
No.
I've always been glad.
You ain't
That's why
always
you
been
never
glad.
do it.
You thought you was gonna have
Mr. Gale, Mr. Gale and Miss Percy, I can't hear any more of this.
Oh.
Why though?
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy.
He don't care. He doesn't care.
I want to go hug her, you know, and tell her it's gonna be all right. I hate to hear her cry like that, you know.
So do I.
That was just fucking trifling. And something I want to point out that is all too common. In many occasions, when I see a man just get dogged out for the entire show until the DNA results are read, at no point does the woman apologize. Yes, it happens rarely, but most of the time, the women are so embarrassed, caught up in their feelings, they immediately go on the defensive, they go on the attack. He wasn't the father. You were so sure a minute ago, and you done filled that child's head with telling her that this man was her father, and she's now an adult with kids of her own, and she has hated this man. He is not the father. The daughter didn't apologize, which I understand she was upset, but at some point, based on how she talked about that man during the hearing, she should have been woman enough to go, you know what? My apologies. The mother should have been woman enough to go, you know what? I thought he was the father. I'm sorry. I can respect that. But this, well, I'm glad he ain't the father. I'm glad he ain't the father. You wouldn't have brought him there if you was glad he wasn't the father. You sat there in court and got embarrassed. Now, we just watched that on one video clip, but that is all too common. I was looking at some data from fraud.com, and you can look it up yourself. I think it said a 2023 study was done. About 1,211 fathers, alleged fathers who were not married, were tested to see if they were the biological fathers. They brought paternity court cases. And of that number, let me make sure I get it right. Of that number, 133 were not the father. Out of 1,211 cases, 133 were not the father. That's 11% of men who thought they were the father, or were being told they were the father, or may have been the father. They were a possibility of being the father, but they were not. I've seen the paternity court show where one woman got child support for one child from two different men for 18 years. Child support from two different men, and neither one of them were the father. Here is my call, my charge for tonight. Parents, talk to your children as they are when they're age appropriate, and let them know. If you have a child, get a paternity test. I've seen women tell men that if you get this paternity test, yeah, I will give you a paternity test. You wait, if this is my child, you ain't giving me nothing. But I've heard women say, if you take this paternity test, we are done. Okay, I'll risk you breaking up with me to make sure I know what I'm getting into. Men, I know the birth of a child is an amazing experience. I've had that experience. I know, but don't let your emotions override your logic. A lot of times now you can get a paternity test right there when the baby's born. Now you can even get a paternity test before the baby is born. Get it over with, put it behind you. No matter what comes up in the future, you will never have to question whether that's your child. That is peace of mind. Men, get a paternity test. Women, insist on a paternity test, even if you know you've been faithful. That way, that man can never come to you 6 months from now, a year from now, or whatever. And my last thing I'll say, ladies, when you get into an argument with a man, stop telling him he's not the father, especially if you believe he is the father. Because when you tell a man he is not the father, that doubt is always going to be there. And when I've seen this happen, it was always because the woman said, well, I was angry and I wanted to get back at him. Men, get the paternity test and you don't have to worry about what somebody said during the heated argument. Find out if you're the father. If you're the father, be responsible. Sign the birth certificate. Raise the child. Water your seed. Make sure your child is good. Do the very best you can. Learn, but please stop signing birth certificates, acknowledging paternity for kids that you don't know if they are yours. Family, I love y'all. Much respect. Shout out to y'all. I am going to ask you all to please like my podcast channel, like the video. On Facebook, it is Family Talk. If you need the link, send me a message to my regular Facebook profile. I will send you the link to like the page. On YouTube, it is Family Talk. Please subscribe to the page. On TikTok, it is Family Talk #5. Please like the page. Instagram, it is Family Talk. Please like the page. On Twitter, it is Family Talk. Holler at me, folks. Feel free to send me topics for discussion. I absolutely have no problem doing research. I try to come with data every show. I don't want this just to be about my opinion, but rest assured, I love y'all. Best wishes to you, and I want nothing but the best for you. Good night, family.